Picture this. You're in a room full of witnesses. They sustain the idea that you murdered your landlord and friend in cold blood. And you're just sitting there without any recollection of what happened. What would you do in that scenario? Well, in today's case, the culprit took a strange route towards justifying what had happened. The guilt was placed on the devil. Welcome to Guilty or Not, where we take a look at the world's most gruesome cases, analyse them, try to figure out why the perpetrator did their horrible deed. Grab a cup of coffee or tea, find a cosy place, and let's dive into the case of Arne Cheyenne Johnson. Let's take a trip to Brookfield, Connecticut. Arne Johnson was 19 years old at the time. The year was 1981 when he got accused of brutally murdering 2 innocent people. But he firmly believed and stated that he didn't do it of his own free will. Instead, he had been compelled by other supernatural forces. Arne was engaged to Debbie Glatzel at the time, and the couple were helping their family to move into their new rental home. While they were carrying all of the boxes and other stuff that the family had, they noticed that a waterbed was placed inside the house. David Glatzel, who was 11 years old at the time, went inside the room in which the waterbed was in, alone. There, something eerie took place. The boy fell onto the bed. He allegedly felt like something had pushed him. As he turned around, he saw an old man dressed in a plaid shirt and blue jeans. The stranger then spoke, telling the young boy to immediately leave the house because no one was safe there. Without skipping a beat, David left the room and ran towards his family. He told everyone about what had happened and what he'd seen, but no one believed him, saying that he was just trying to come up with excuses to not help with the boxes. But this supernatural encounter would not be the last one for David. Later that day, the young boy would see the old man again. Except this time he had a different appearance. He seemed to be much more demonic than when he first saw him. His clothes were torn, his skin looked burnt, and he had a darker complexion. But when it came to his eyes, they were much more sunken in. David could barely see them. The old man didn't act like he had before either. He seemed much wilder. He growled, moved his head from side to side, and even let out some words in Old Latin. After this encounter, David changed his demeanour. Maybe it happened because the old man threatened his life and even his soul, but one thing was certain. Something was up with the 11-year-old. David became much more violent. He started biting, spitting and swearing. Actions that were not a part of him at all. It was like he was a different person. According to other family members, at night he would experience convulsions. He would also have visions of something or someone trying to strangle him. David would then flail his arms around, trying to defend himself. The boy would be held down by his family, trying to calm him down. But one thing scared them the most. Bruises appeared on his body, apparently out of thin air. Despite being just a child, he also gained immense strength, being able to fight off the adults that were just trying to stop him from having convulsions and were trying to keep him safe. As time went on, his voice changed. He wouldn't sound the same anymore, and instead he developed a deep tone of voice, something that was completely unnatural for an 11-year-old. According to what others have stated, his voice even sounded like more than one person was speaking at the same time. David would sometimes speak in Latin, a language that he clearly didn't know, and on one occasion he even quoted a poem called Paradise Lost by John Milton. His parents insisted that he would have no knowledge of such a poem and couldn't explain how he was able to quote it word by word. The Glatzel family became increasingly scared as time went on. That was the moment when Debbie asked Arne to move in with them so he could comfort her and help with the 11-year-old. Because of his condition worsening minute by minute and having no way of making him feel better, the family turned to the local church to ask for help. A priest was sent by the St. Joseph's Catholic Church to see what was going on at the household. The first thing that the priest did was to bless the house. He figured that, once the home was inhabitable for a demon, it would sway it to leave the poor boy alone, but unfortunately it had the opposite effect. David would start to see the old man around the house on a daily basis. The boy couldn't function anymore, and it was time for the family to get a different kind of help. They contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, one of the most recognised paranormal investigators and demonologists on the planet. With an impressive resume that covered the Raggedy Ann doll, the Amityville haunting, and the Enfield poltergeist, they were just the team for the job. Upon arriving, the two also came with a mental health professional. They were trying to be sure that the little boy didn't have any mental illnesses, but of course that wasn't the case. Over the course of the next few months, they started performing exorcisms in the hopes of liberating the young boy from the demon that possessed him. While all of this was going on, David started to talk about future events, as if he would know what was going to happen. And one eerie thing was that he predicted a murder, one that was soon going to happen, one that would affect the family. The Glatzels contacted the police and told them about the upcoming murder. Of course, they couldn't do anything about it. Upon further investigation done by the Warrens, it was concluded that it wasn't just one demon possessing the boy, but a total of 43 different entities that took over his body. During one of the exorcisms, Arne began taunting the demon, telling him to leave David and possess his body instead. From that moment on, Arne was about to experience something horrible. Not long after he talked to the demon, something happened. Arne was involved in a car accident. He rammed his car into a tree, and after that, he claimed that something took control of his car. Following the accident, he went on to investigate a well in the Glatzel backyard. Apparently, that's where the demon lived. According to Arne, that was the moment when he became fully possessed by the entity. It all happened as he looked down into the well and locked eyes with it. The Warrens already warned everyone not to interact with the well, but it seemed that Arne did not listen. And even though the demons possessed Arne as well, the 11-year-old's condition started to worsen. Eventually, seeing that there was nothing he could do, Arne and Debbie moved out and found their own apartment. It was owned by Debbie's boss at her new job, Alan Bono, and even though the two were far from the Glatzel house, Arne also started to display odd behaviour, similar to David, but in smaller doses. Upon hearing his growling one night, she realised that he may have the same fate as her little brother. On February the 16th, 1981, Arne missed work, calling in sick, took his sister Wanda and his fiancee's cousin Mary, and went on to visit Debbie at work. Her new job was at a dog kennel. Her boss and their landlord, Alan Bono, treated everyone to lunch at a bar, and after that, they went back to his apartment to hang out. Later, Debbie, accompanied by Wanda and Mary, went out for pizza. But Debbie couldn't help but feel that something was about to happen. So the lunch was cut short, and the girls returned to Alan's apartment to get Arne. Upon arriving, apparently Alan got irritable. He previously drank a hefty amount of alcohol. The reason why he got mad was because the group tried to leave, but he grabbed 9-year-old Mary by the hand, hoping to stop the party from leaving him all alone. While all of this was happening, Arne, who'd left the room so he wouldn't get into an altercation with Alan, returned and yelled at him, telling the man to let go of the little girl. Eventually, Bono let go of Mary and the child ran outside to the car. Sensing that a fight was about to break out, Debbie jumped in between her fiancé and her employer, but what was about to happen never crossed her mind. In those moments, Arne began to let out some disturbing animal noises and took out a pocket knife. He started lunging at Alan. Debbie, afraid of what was happening, moved out of the way and took cover. The blade of the pocket knife pierced Alan a total of 22 times. The criminal then got up and simply left the house, leaving the girls in the presence of Bono, who was struggling to stay alive. The police were contacted shortly after, and they found and handcuffed Arne before taking him to the station. He was wandering in the nearby woods, about 2 miles from the place where he committed the crime. The man was arrested, and his bail was set to $125,000. Alan was taken to the hospital, but being in such a condition, he let out his last breath only a few hours later. This would be known as the first murder in the history of the town. The next day, Lorraine Warren went straight to the police. She wanted to tell them that Arne had no control over himself when the murder took place, and she blamed it all on the demon that was possessing him. Shortly thereafter, the news went public, and the media further propelled the case. Millions of people were doubting what Lorraine Warren said. Martin Manella, a well-known lawyer, was hired to defend Arne, but upon hearing the possession story, he started to use it to his client's advantage rather than running away from it. In an interview, Martin said that the court already dealt with the existence of God, and when it came to that case, they will deal with the existence of the devil. The case became extremely popular around the country. It was the first time that demonic possession would be used as a defence in court. When the case was presented to Judge Robert Callahan, and hearing Arne's plea that he wasn't guilty by virtue of possession, he refused the defence. The judge stated that there wasn't any real evidence involved, and everything presented was irrelative and unscientific. This forced the defence to change the plea to non-guilty by virtue of self-defence, taking into consideration Alan's aggression towards 9-year-old Mary. The trial began on October the 28th, 1981. Almost a month later, the jury, after 15 hours of deliberation, found Arne guilty of first-degree manslaughter, sentencing him to 10 to 20 years in prison. But as fate would have it, he only served 5 years, being released due to his model behaviour. Not much is known about his life after prison. Apparently, Arne returned to his family life and no major incidents happened ever since. This was the case of Arne Johnson. Let us know in the comments what your take is on it. Did he really get possessed by a demon? Or did he just lie so that he could justify his actions? We're very curious to know if you consider him guilty or not. Until next time, keep your eyes peeled all the time.